Is there some corruption that could have happened?
Their unethical, corrupt dealings, which was worth $60 million. He dismissed everything.
Blake Lively's courtroom glow turned into a full-blown meltdown after Ryan Reynolds, yes, her own husband, exposed her shady little backdoor deal with the judge, because apparently, justice isn't blind, it's just booked through Hollywood connections, specifically Judge Lehman's director brother. And Blake really thought Ryan would stay quiet. Bless her naive little PR-trained heart, because at first, on the night of June 10th, the entertainment world erupted in celebration as news broke that Blake Lively had won her court case against Justin Baldoni. The headlines were glowing, the tweets were endless, and Hollywood insiders couldn't stop calling it a clean sweep. For a few hours, it genuinely felt like Blake had pulled off the impossible, completely shutting down Baldoni's legal claims and walking away spotless. But the victory was hollow, because beneath all the glitz and carefully worded PR statements, the truth was already beginning to leak, and it wasn't pretty. By the next morning, legal blogs and case trackers began to post updates that no one in Blake's team had expected to go public. Two of Baldoni's most important claims hadn't been defeated. They'd been dismissed. Quietly, without fanfare, without argument, without trial. And that changed everything. The two claims that vanished overnight were not small technicalities. They were the foundation of Baldoni's entire case. The first centered on creative control, his right as co-producer to be actively involved in the direction and execution of the project. He had accused Blake of systematically pushing him out of decision-making, rewriting scenes without approval, overriding casting votes, and essentially hijacking the film to mold it into her personal vision. The second was even more explosive. Baldoni claimed that Blake had failed to disclose several pre-existing contractual arrangements, financial and otherwise, that tied her to a private investment group backing the production. If true, this meant she had been playing both sides, working as a star while secretly influencing budget decisions and pushing her own financial interests behind the scenes. These weren't side notes. These were the heartbeat of the entire lawsuit, and yet, Judge Alan Lehman declared them irrelevant. For a ruling that carried such weight, the explanation was bizarrely vague. In court filings, Lehman cited procedural grounds and claimed the allegations lacked sufficient specificity to move forward. But observers quickly pointed out that the filings had been supported by detailed documentation, internal memos, email trails, and even partial contract records. Baldoni's team had come prepared. And yet, these pillars of the case were removed without a hearing. Just gone. The legal term was dismissal without prejudice, but it wasn't the label that mattered. It was the timing, the convenience, and the silence that followed. Because by discarding the only two claims that could have truly cornered Blake, the judge essentially gutted the case. What remained were fragments, claims about vague misconduct, general workplace friction, things that Blake's lawyers could swat away in a single motion. The backlash began almost immediately, especially within the legal community. Critics noted that dismissing such core allegations without allowing discovery, the formal process of exchanging evidence, was highly unusual. Some even began whispering about misconduct. And right then, Baldoni's lawyers made their move. They filed a Rule 60B motion, requesting that the dismissals be reconsidered based on what they described as compromised judicial integrity. The wording was careful, but the implication was nuclear. They believed something wasn't right with Judge Lehman's decision. And within hours of that motion being filed, the pieces of a much larger story began to click into place. While the court documents remained sealed, leaks began surfacing. It turned out Judge Lehman had a brother. Not just any brother, but a well-known Hollywood director who had previously collaborated with Blake Lively on a high-profile charity campaign in 2019. That connection had never been disclosed in court. On its own, a judge having a sibling in the industry isn't scandalous. But when that sibling has ties to the defendant, and the judge then rules in her favor by erasing the most dangerous claims against her, The optics go from questionable to explosive. It didn't help that insiders started reporting quiet meetings between Blake's PR team and Lehman's office in the days leading up to the hearing. Suddenly, the idea of a clean win started to rot from the inside. It wasn't a victory, it was a favor. And the one who made sure the public found out? Ryan Reynolds. He hadn't said a word during the court proceedings. He'd stayed out of interviews, ignored press inquiries, and refused to comment publicly on Blake's case. But when the news of the dismissal broke and the internet started congratulating his wife, Ryan posted a single cryptic Instagram story. Directors cast actors, not judges. It didn't mention names. It didn't need to. The message hit like a sledgehammer, and within minutes, bloggers, Twitter sleuths, and legal analysts began dissecting every word. The message was clear. Ryan knew something, and more importantly, he was done protecting Blake. That post opened the floodgates. Legal teams began talking. Industry insiders who had been keeping quiet suddenly had a reason to speak. And Blake? She reportedly had a full-blown meltdown when she saw Ryan's post. According to one source inside her camp, she screamed that he had betrayed everything, and that he didn't understand what's at stake. If that's not a guilty reaction, it's at least a terrified one. Because once Ryan hinted that Blake had been playing dirty, everything started unraveling. Baldoni's team dug deeper, the media got bolder, and the court, once quiet, was now under scrutiny itself. Judge Lehman, the man who handed Blake her so-called victory, is now reportedly facing internal review. And what began as a petty courtroom feud is shaping up to be one of the biggest legal scandals in recent celebrity history. For weeks, Ryan Reynolds kept his mouth shut while the internet was on fire with Blake Lively's courtroom drama. While journalists hunted for exclusive statements and fans speculated about which side he was on, Ryan played the silent observer until June 11th at exactly 6:17 a.m., when he finally snapped. Without tagging anyone or even writing a caption, he posted a black screen on his Instagram story with just one sentence written in white font: "Justice isn't a Netflix script. Directors don't cast judges." That was it. No emojis, no names, but it was enough. Within 20 minutes, that story had been screenshotted and reposted across Twitter, TikTok, and Hollywood gossip pages, each one echoing the same take. Ryan wasn't being vague. He was exposing Blake publicly, coldly, and deliberately. The line hit especially hard because it didn't come from a tabloid or a burner account. It came from him. A-list actor, Blake's husband, the man who had been sitting courtside at her premieres and making adorable red carpet jokes for nearly a decade. And now, he had taken a sledgehammer to her credibility in 11 words. Page 6 ran the headline, "Ryan Turns on Blake." Before 9 a.m., Dumois had already received 10 anonymous DMS by then, all claiming that Ryan had been furious for weeks after discovering a string of communications between Blake's legal advisors and Noah Lehman, the brother of Judge Alan Lehman, the very judge who tossed out two of the most important claims in Justin Baldoni's lawsuit. One of those messages, allegedly forwarded to Ryan by a disgruntled ex-staffer, contained a sentence that might just bury this entire case in scandal. "Let's get Alan to bury it." The email, traced back to a member of Blake's crisis management team, was time-stamped May 17th at 3:12 p.m., just 6 days before Judge Lehman made the decision to dismiss Baldoni's creative control breach and undisclosed contractual ties claims. And guess who was CC'd? Noah Lehman. That wasn't just a red flag. That was a neon billboard. Insiders familiar with Ryan's reaction say he confronted Blake about it the same week. One of his longtime associates, speaking under condition of anonymity to the Hollywood Burner, said Ryan was shocked and disgusted and believed the entire ruling was tainted. According to that same source, Ryan wanted Blake to come clean before the press dug it up. She didn't. And that's when, allegedly, he decided to blow it all up. The Instagram story wasn't just a dig, it was a warning, a signal to the public and Baldoni's legal team that there was more to this case than bad scripts and bruised egos. And Baldoni's lawyers didn't waste a second. Less than 48 hours after Ryan's post, court records show that attorney Melissa Jarecki, representing Baldoni, filed a supplemental motion requesting an evidentiary review of private, undisclosed correspondence between the defendant's PR affiliates and third-party individuals connected to the judicial bench. And who suddenly popped up on the legal radar? Diane Reynolds, a former administrative assistant to Judge Alan Lehman, who had mysteriously resigned 2 weeks before the dismissal ruling. Initially unreachable, Diane was finally contacted on June 9th and agreed to provide confidential testimony under Rule 801D2, which allows certain admissions to be used in court even if they come from non-witnesses, and what she said shook the case open like a fault line. In her statement, Diane recalled an incident from May 19th, just 4 days before the ruling, where she overheard a closed-door conversation between Judge Lehman and a man she later identified from LinkedIn as Noah Lehman. According to her, Judge Lehman looked tense, distracted, and almost scared, and was repeatedly heard saying things like, "It's bigger than both of us," and "I'm doing this once, but never again." Diane said she didn't understand it at the time, but when the ruling came out and Baldoni's top claims were dismissed, she realized what she had witnessed. But her revelations didn't stop at overheard conversations. Diane went further, supplying a timeline, cross-referenced with courthouse security logs, that showed 4 undocumented meetings between members of Blake Lively's PR team and someone from Judge Lehman's chambers between May 14th and May 22nd. None of these meetings were officially recorded. No visitor badges, no appointment records, no email scheduling trails. Just blacked out gaps in the calendar and unexplained visitor log discrepancies, which Diane took screenshots of before resigning. When she was asked during the deposition why she quit, she responded bluntly, "Because I wasn't willing to be part of a cover-up." At the center of this complaint was the bombshell that Judge Lehman's older brother, Noah Lehman, had received a $1.2 million payment through a consulting firm, Graywave Consulting LLC, from a Delaware-based fund allegedly tied to Blake Lively's PR team. This, according to the complaint, created a direct conflict of interest, one that was never disclosed during proceedings, even though it materially altered the trajectory of the case. More damningly, the filing referenced Diane Renner's testimony, which included a timeline of undocumented meetings between Blake's media handlers and court officials just days before the dismissal. The commission confirmed receipt of the complaint at 2:14 p.m., and legal watchdog groups immediately began tracking its progress. But Baldoni's team didn't stop there. Alongside the judicial complaint, they filed a motion demanding the entire case be escalated to the Appellate Division of the Supreme Court of the State of New York. In the motion, they cited Rule 2221 of New York Civil Procedure, which allows parties to seek review of a decision if new evidence surfaces or if judicial conduct calls into question the integrity of the ruling. The document ran 97 pages and included not only exhibits from the original complaint, but also bank transfer records, internal PR strategy memos, and communications between Artisan Circle Media and the Lehman family, none of which had been disclosed during the original trial. Baldoni's motion also included a secondary demand that, if state-level escalation was insufficient due to Lehman's jurisdictional influence, the case be transferred to federal court under Title 28, Section 1443 of the U.S. Code, which protects litigants from civil rights violations under color of state law. The argument: that Baldoni's right to a fair hearing was deliberately sabotaged by a judge who acted in concert with parties financially aligned with Blake Lively. While that might sound like an aggressive legal Hail Mary, it's not just courtroom theater. According to Professor Marlene Kessler, a legal ethics expert at Columbia Law School, the documented ties between the judge's family and the defendant's financial backers are textbook grounds for mandatory recusal and retroactive invalidation. Kessler appeared on NY Legal Scope Live on June 13th and stated that, in her professional opinion, if the financial trail checks out, this case is coming apart at the seams. That's not just legal theory either. Within hours of the judicial complaint going public, a federal observer attached to the Southern District of New York began reviewing the matter as a preliminary concern, according to a leaked memo obtained by the Capitol Law Ledger. The memo, marked confidential and dated June 13th, 8:37 a.m., indicated that at least 2 federal judges had been briefed on the possibility of the case being forcibly removed from the state docket due to credibility concerns around Lehman's ruling. The term used in the internal summary: judicial integrity compromised. While the judicial misconduct track runs its course, Baldoni's lawyers have opened another front. On June 14th, a separate civil litigation notice was filed in New York County's Supreme Court, this one directly naming Blake Lively as an individual and accusing her of tampering with the judicial process, indirect bribery, and fraudulent concealment. The civil suit references not just the email trails and bank transfers, but also Blake's alleged involvement in securing illegal influence over the timeline and tone of the court's decision. It calls for monetary damages in excess of $25 million and seeks a permanent injunction against Blake participating in any legal matters tied to the production in question. And that's when legal analysts began raising the most serious possibility yet: criminal exposure. On June 15th, Jason Miles, a former federal prosecutor now with the New York Integrity Accountability Bureau, told the Justice broadcast that if the payment from Artisan Circle Media to Gray Wave Consulting can be definitively linked to Blake's camp as a quid pro quo for judicial favor, she could be staring down a Class C felony under New York Penal Law Section 200.45, a charge that includes intentional conduct to corrupt the outcome of an official proceeding by means of undisclosed financial arrangement. Miles explained that this type of charge doesn't require the money to go to the judge himself. It's enough that someone close to the judge received a benefit with the intent to influence. Blake's legal team has yet to formally respond, but internal sources say that her crisis strategy firm, Fenwick Collective, has already gone into lockdown. As of June 16th, Blake has canceled 3 public appearances and is no longer scheduled to appear at the Greenwich Film Symposium on June 18th, where she was previously confirmed as a keynote speaker. Meanwhile, media outlets like Law and Light, Courtroom Confidential, and Radar Daily have begun running detailed breakdowns of every known interaction between her team and the Lehman Circle, with multiple independent journalists calling the situation potentially explosive. Blake Lively may have walked out of court with a smirk on June 9th, but with the judicial complaint now active, a federal court looming, and a personal civil suit hunting for damages, that smirk might not last much longer. On the morning of June 13th, just 2 days after Ryan Reynolds dropped that now infamous Instagram grenade, Blake Lively's team scrambled into full-blown crisis mode. The narrative they tried to spin was almost laughably desperate. An anonymous source, clearly planted, fed the story to the Daily Stream, claiming that Ryan was simply a bitter ex spiraling for attention, and that his cryptic post about justice and directors had nothing to do with Blake's court case. Within minutes, Gossip First, Pop Bench, and a handful of smaller outlets began parroting the same line. But the timing was off, the tone was tone deaf, and the audience wasn't buying it. What should have been a tight defense spiraled into a PR implosion. Behind the scenes, things were far uglier than the press releases let on. According to a leak from Fenwick Collective, the crisis PR firm Blake had hired in February, she completely lost composure after Ryan's post went live. At approximately 8:43 a.m., Blake reportedly screamed in a closed strategy call, "He's going to ruin everything! He's not supposed to do this!" The outburst was heard by at least 6 staffers, 2 of whom later confirmed it to Page Pulse under strict anonymity. One even claimed Blake had accused Ryan of colluding with Baldoni's lawyers, a theory that her legal team quickly dismissed, but not before it made its way into 3 separate tabloid headlines within 24 hours. By the afternoon of June 13th, the situation had worsened. Fenwick Collective officially dropped Blake as a client. Their reason? Fundamental breakdown in client transparency. That's corporate speak for, she lied to us, and we're not going down with her. Fenwick's internal Slack messages, leaked by an assistant who was laid off the same day, revealed that the team was blindsided by the financial documents tying Blake's media partners to Noah Lehman, Judge Alan Lehman's brother. Those revelations had not been disclosed to Fenwick when they built their original media plan around judicial fairness and misrepresented facts. The firm removed all campaign material involving Blake by 6 p.m. that evening. Meanwhile, the fallout continued to snowball. On June 14th, Netflix quietly removed Blake's upcoming interview special, Conversations with Courage, from their internal release calendar. The special, originally scheduled for release on July 2nd, featured Blake in a one-on-one conversation with filmmaker Ava Carlin about integrity in the arts and the power of authentic storytelling. The irony, of course, wrote itself. Neither Netflix nor Blake's team has publicly commented on the removal, but sources inside the streamer's marketing division told TVS Scope that the decision was mutually agreed upon after recent developments raised concerns about reputational exposure. By the morning of June 15th, Blake's attempts at controlling the narrative had completely collapsed. Paparazzi stationed outside New York County Supreme Court caught her exiting the building at 9:52 a.m. She wore dark sunglasses, kept her head down, and ignored at least 3 shouted questions about the judicial complaint and the $1.2 million transfer tied to Noah Lehman. Multiple photographers noted that she appeared visibly distressed, with one calling her unrecognizable from the woman who walked into this case. Images were syndicated across TMZ, Shutterbuzz, and Sleuth Now, sparking a fresh wave of speculation about her mental state. By noon, Blake Breakdown was trending on Twitter, and then silence. Blake vanished from the public eye, Ryan went completely dark on social media, and her legal team, now operating without PR backup, stopped issuing statements altogether. But the legal process didn't pause with them. In a sealed session on June 16th, a federal liaison confirmed that the case had been placed under federal review, with a formal petition underway to move it to the Southern District of New York. That court is notorious for handling high-profile financial misconduct cases and has significantly stricter evidentiary procedures. The transfer petition, filed by Baldoni's team under 28 U.S.C. Section 1443, is currently under expedited review with an expected decision by June 21st. In tandem with the federal escalation, Judge Alan Lehman was formally recused from presiding over any future celebrity-related civil suits as of June 15th, following recommendations from the New York Commission on Judicial Conduct. An internal memo from the commission, reviewed by Lawline Daily, cited potential integrity concerns pending full investigation. While Lehman has not made a public statement, his chambers have gone into complete lockdown, and his staff is reportedly under instruction to direct all inquiries to commission counsel. With Lehman sidelined and Blake under federal review, Baldoni's legal team has taken a decisive upper hand. As of June 17th, they control both the pace and the tone of the case. Courtroom insiders say the mood has shifted dramatically. Public sentiment is now largely in Baldoni's favor, especially as more details of the attempted media manipulation come to light. Civil rights attorney Vera Tomasino, in a recent podcast episode of Legal Fallout, said plainly, "There's no putting the toothpaste back in the tube here. Blake's position is rapidly shifting from celebrity litigant to potential criminal respondent." Meanwhile, Ryan Reynolds has returned to silence. Since his June 11th post, his accounts have remained inactive. No comments, no likes, no public appearances. His last known communication, according to a close family friend who spoke with Star Signal, was a brief call to his agent simply stating, "I've said what needed to be said. The rest isn't mine." Whether that silence is strategic, emotional, or both remains unknown. Blake, now isolated from her PR team, distanced from major studios and legally exposed, is reportedly still in New York, attending closed-door legal briefings and preparing for what could be the most difficult chapter of her career. The industry buzz has shifted, from whether Blake Lively would win a court case to whether she'll survive the fallout with her name intact.